Jeanne, and I'm from the Washington, D.C. metro area. Before I get started, I want to get a feel for everybody. Where are you coming in from, and which part of the industry are you from? I think the first person we have is Nicole.
Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
Hey, I am Nicole. I am based in Chicago. I had been a social planner, so wedding planner for 16 years. Most recently had worked at a DMC for corporate events, and obviously was laid off in April.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We have Katie. Yeah.
Hi. So I work for the University of Tennessee Knoxville Student Union. So I oversee all the meeting and event requests that come in for the building, which needless to say right now, there's not much of that.
It's not much.
Yeah, kind of limited on that scale. And even outside of that, pre-COVID, I've sort of outgrown my current job, and basically there's no room for me to really grow within my position, nor people that I really feel have the same values or trust to around. So that's kind of what I've been doing during this downtime, is just trying to connect with other people.
That's great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Oh my gosh. Hi.
Hi. So good to see you.
Oh my gosh. And Nicole Denner's here, which is like making my whole day. Sorry, I get very excited very easily. My name is Amanda Zahner. I was the corporate planner for about 20 years, and a year ago at this time, I took the jump and I started working for Judy Holler, who's a keynote speaker and best-selling author.
Yes.
And we're trying to build her business. We're trying to scale up even in the middle of a pandemic and try to branch out and do new things. And I was lucky to meet Jeanne on an event that we did together, the last human contact I've had.
Yes, indeed.
Last event I traveled to. So like these women from AWE, if you're not part of that Facebook group, you should join in. They're amazing. They're just
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. Elizabeth?
Hello, so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to your talk. I was kind of taking a break. Am I just talking about where I live and what I do?
No, you just say who you are, where you're coming from. That's it.
I'm Elizabeth, and I am coming to you from Portland, Oregon today.
Excellent. And next, Gigi?
Hey, I'm Gigi. I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Excellent. Mackenzie?
Hi, I'm coming from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Excellent. We have, I can't see the names. I have Darcy.
Hi, it's Darcy, and I am also in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay. Kim Possible, love that name.
Yeah, I'm joining you from just outside Houston, Texas.
Excellent. And above with the blue shirt and the glasses and the long hair, I don't have your name. You're muted. Yes, you. Sarah.
Hey, Sarah, I'm coming from South Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Excellent. And last person with the fish in the background?
Diane. Hi, Diane. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I really am excited to be here. This is my first time speaking at a conference. I'm so excited and nervous at the same time, but I really hope that this will be a conversation. I want to talk through what our experience was like, what we learned. This is not a how to solve racial injustice course. Let me be absolutely clear about that. This is just an experience on how we put an event together that was aimed to doing just that, and what you can learn from the content strategy, the approach, the challenges you will have in having any sort of difficult conversation at a macro level. So I'm just going to share a couple of my slides so you can see what we did. Hold on. So last August, we held an event for my organization, and the goal was to really talk about how we could empower and inform our members around understanding what systemic racial injustice is and its role within our industry. We wanted them to be to become agents of change, so they can go out there and look at the work that they do and how it affects the communities that we serve, and how to approach the design process in a very different way. So you might wonder, why would an organization do that? Why would they want to participate in that sort of social justice conversation? You're a professional association, you're here, people are paying dues, and you're here to provide professional development. However, this is a human topic. This is all about us as individuals and members of our society, and the work that we do, the things that we say, the things that we think affect how we impact and engage with others. So that is why we decided to embark on that journey. But it all started, like many associations, at the outset of COVID. We had to make the unfortunate decision to cancel our annual event. And our annual event is a major revenue generator for the organization. So it was a very big deal. We wanted to make sure that in the absence of such a highly engaging event that we put on, we usually attract between 18 to 25,000 people. It's massive. There's a lot of parties. There's a lot of great sessions, amazing keynote speakers. There are architectural tours, a whole lot of things that we do. And so we wanted to make sure that we stay front of mind for our members, so they don't, they keep thinking about us and keep making sure that we are providing value for them. So at the time in March, the most relevant topic that we can think of in terms of providing information, our members also are licensed individuals, so they need to maintain their license by accumulating continuing education credits. So how could we put out education that would be meaningful and compelling for them? And COVID was, at the time, the obvious choice. How do we help them think about how to redesign spaces, how to reintroduce folks into the studio, how do you design schools, new hospitals, and all of the projects that architects work on. And then May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered by police officers in Minneapolis. And this traumatic event just catapulted the fight for equality into the forefront of our lives, as everybody is now seeing and witnessing the tragedy of what African-American communities and Brown communities have been experiencing throughout this country for years. So we had to make a decision to shift. We wanted to make sure that we continue to be relevant. So the conversation was not going to be about just COVID. It was going to be on a macro level, because a lot of different elements of what we're seeing could be attributed to the understanding how fundamental systemic racial injustice is within our society. So we decided that we're going to dive headfirst into creating an event that was going to help people understand what systemic racial injustice is and how it is related to the built environment. So this event was called Architecture in Turbulent Times, and Equity, Environment, Health, and Economy were the 4 tracks that we devised. And we wanted to make sure that as we're tackling this topic and how we're going about doing it was very strategic and very thoughtful. So we needed to just confirm. We knew what the organization's stance was on this subject. Our organization stands against anything that is supporting systemic racial injustice. We actually put out statements to say that we're going to do our best to try to resolve it within our industry and also within society. So then, knowing that we already are in alignment with what we're trying to do organizationally, we then needed to define the desired outcome. What is it that we want to get out of this event? Or do we want people to think, feel, or do? We were not trying to boil the ocean. This is not how to solve racism in America course, but you have architects and designers whose work affects the life, safety, and welfare of our communities. And they needed to understand that the work that they do impacts the built environment in a very major way. And if you don't understand how racial injustice rears its head through policy, through structures, then you won't really see how it can affect the work in the community. The second piece is we wanted to make sure is we just decide on the key message. What is the one thing you're going to try to do? We're in a digital space. Nobody has time to sit there for an hour listening to topic on topic on topic. We naturally have one message and then design every session to always reflect that one message. And that one message was how the built environment has historically perpetuated the negative effects of systemic racial injustice. And then we design for that outcome in support of that message. So some of the lessons that we had to learn in the process was you have to be absolutely clear in your intent. I've had many conversations and influences that could try to steer us in either a different path or a sanitized path. And I had to be steadfast in my resolve and very clear in our intent on what we're trying to do so we can deliver on that desired outcome. You have to be authentic. If you are coming at this with genuine humility, grace, and knowing what you know and realizing and acknowledging what you don't know, that is how you bring value to this type of conversation. You also have to know your brief. Know what you are talking about. Don't pretend to know what you don't. Don't add things that are not substantiated. Do not, make up facts and data. None of that is necessary. What we're trying to do is establish a baseline. Literally definitions. What do we mean? Understanding policies like redlining within the design and architecture community, how it impacts communities overall. Understand what those effects look like. Understanding the mental health result of how we design the projects. We've had a conversation where an architect who's connecting music and how the lyrics in music have actually described the environment that we have designed as a society based on the premises of the foundation of systemic racial injustice. And this is the outcome in mental health in those communities that are marginalized. And ultimately, like I said before, this is a human-centric issue. It's not a political issue. It's not a social issue. It is down to who we are as human beings. We are engaging with each other one-on-one. We are engaging with each other at a macro level. So if we see the individual first as a human being, this may result in better outcomes overall. So I wanted to also show you what we did. So this is a screenshot of the presentations. This is what the example of how the audience was taking in this information. So we've had in the middle here, there's a media player. Those were pre-recorded panel discussions. We've had speakers like a mayor, architects, social psychologists. There was a representative from the environmental justice program from the NAACP to really establish a baseline, help the audience understand why we're having this conversation. And then what we found was the key takeaway is finding the circle that has the organization's priorities, and then what your audience needs. That nucleus, that middle of the Venn diagram, that's your sweet spot. If you can connect those two dots and hone in your message around that, and so that when folks say, what does this have to do with my job? This has nothing to do with my job. I design buildings. Well, let me help you understand the impact of the buildings and the built world that you've designed and how it affects the people who are actually living in it. So those are the kinds of conversation we wanted to have and inform them so they can go out there, and as they're thinking about building new spaces, new places, those pieces of information are informing the decisions around the design. So you would have topics like, understanding the state of equity in the architecture profession, a conversation around the struggle for economic, environmental, and social justice, designing healthy places and equitable spaces, the exclusion of Black America, the economic exclusion of Black America. That was a very contested session at the beginning. People are like, why are we talking about this? Well, you need to understand what I mean by it. So having a conversation of, around redlining and how it has excluded people from affording homes, and home ownership being a quintessential fundamental wealth builder in America. When you're excluding an entire community from participating in that opportunity, you then have a wealth gap that happens along the lines of community. So those are the things that we did for this event, very much keeping it grounded in the professional conversation, keeping it grounded at how it relates to them and the work that they do, and then allowing folks to take that and empowering them to have the conversations they need to have moving forward. So this is it for the flight. What I want to do is open it up to the group. Let's talk. What were the challenges? What were the good days and the bad days around a conversation like this within the organization, with your consumer base? How do you approach it? Is it for everyone? I will tell you, it isn't. It is not for the faint of heart. So I really want to hear from you as to how does this sound to you, and what are the questions that you have in mind?
Jeannie, is it Jeanne or Jeannie? I missed your intro.
Jeanne.
Will you talk a little bit more? You definitely piqued my interest when you said you had to stand firm.
Yes.
When the message was attempting to get sanitized.
Yes, because
oh my God, are you willing to go into a little bit more detail on that?
I'm happy to. So remember, our first direction, we were going COVID, so very much aligned with PPEs and medical stuff and all that. Clear cut, no politics involved. Then after George Floyd, I was asked, can you add a track on racial injustice? And I was like, no, we're not going to add a track on racial injustice. If we're going to talk about racial injustice, we're going to talk about racial injustice. Mm-hmm. And so literally I had an entire content strategy already done, working with curators, we're already working with speakers, scrap the whole thing and go back to foundational. And that's where understanding the connection with the profession, the work that they do in that topic, helps to then build the pillars. So we established and we knew that systemic racial injustice was foundational to how the architecture and the built environment has. So historically, when you think about places like Charleston, South Carolina, those squares that were built for the sale of slaves, somebody designed that, somebody built it, right? When you think about how what we call the projects in the urban environment are designed one way in, one way out, that affects the people and how they live within that environment. There was a famous architect named Le Corbusier who actually coined the term hood rat. If you guys have ever heard that term, it actually came from an architect, and he did a research on how rats reacted to certain environment, and he equated that to Black people. And so when you hear people calling themselves or calling others hood rat, there's history behind it, and it's all based on built environment. So knowing your brief is critical, standing fast. And I knew that I also had a responsibility as a Black woman to stand my ground a bit and say, no, we're not going to have this conversation this way. We're not going to sanitize it. I'm a professional. I know how to structure it so that it is beneficial to our audience. I do know that I have revenue goals. I do know that I don't need anybody in the PR nightmare. I understand all of that. So trust me to also help you do this the right way. You don't want to go the safe route. So we had conversation, we had talks that literally told the profession what they are doing wrong. Our profession is 70% white and male. So therefore, you really need to understand how equity works and what are the challenges that others have had within the profession itself. So we did a panel of women with various backgrounds who are talking about what it's like for them as architects who happen to be women, but they are first seen as female architects. So what that looks like, you've had understanding how climate change, which is very near and dear to that community because they understand that they see themselves as problem solvers in that realm, it affects communities of color worse ways than it does with more affluent communities. And how are you designing those communities? An urban planner, when they're looking at putting a community near, like a bowl within the Ninth Ward in Louisiana, somebody designed that bowl knowing that at some point, we didn't think it would happen, that the levees would break and it would flood in. Like someone designed it in that space. What were the decisions? What were the conversations like? Who was at the table at the time? All of that is part of the work that we do as urban planners and architects and designers. So if we're looking at a topic that is so difficult and are not willing to address it within our profession as well, you have to ask yourself, what exactly is the value add that you're bringing to your organization in this time, in this day and age, as we're continuing to, as we want to attract the next generation, the millennials, and I don't even know how you call it, Zoomers, they're there. They want to talk to, they are ready. So we need to create a safe space to allow people to have those conversations in a professional manner that's not scary. And there are even folks in my on my team who may feel differently, but I have a very different approach. I want more grace and more patience. And I think that will allow us to make progress in a more strategic way.
Well, and you were talking about challenges. I know for us, so after George Floyd, we tried to have a big division meeting to discuss everything. And there was like 100+ people and hardly anybody talked. Well, then in our smaller department I work for, there was like 9 of us. And we were talking about after the meeting how it was going. And part of what came up is there's a lot of trust issues between us and other departments, more on a work level. So it's like, it's really hard to be vulnerable with anybody if you don't really trust them just on a basic, this is how I do my job sort of thing. And one of the departments, we had a retreat with them back in like into December, into January, to try to make things more clear. And like the day after the retreat, the retreat might as well never have happened because things just kind of went back to the way they'd always been. So I think that's part of our struggle, is there's a lot of trust issues and people getting away with things and never having to take accountability for their actions. And even when we're saying this is what we need, and that's just on the basic level of doing your job. So it makes it harder to talk about these much more difficult issues.
Oh, I absolutely agree, Katie. We've had the same challenges as well. You know, a lot of times understanding that it's hard for me to express to you how your behavior is problematic because there is a fundamental lack of trust. So you're not hearing me because there's already like the level, the entry point that we need to be able to even accept the words that are coming from me to you, you're not accepting because you don't trust. Second, there's also this tendency to, in the workplace, to attach feelings with behavior. So people tell me, well, she felt disrespected. No, she did not feel disrespected. Your behavior was unprofessional, and therefore the person reacted. The person had no choice but to think that this is how it, you know, it's coming toward. So there's being very careful how we respond to criticism, being very careful how we give it is going to make things better or worse. So paying attention to that. So a lot of companies have had those town halls, people sharing feelings. No, I'm not sharing feelings, guys. I'm not interested in sharing feelings. Feelings are not solving my problem right now. What I want is solution. I want practicality. I want to be able to go into a meeting with my colleagues where sometimes I am the only one of the entire group who's non-white, and for you not to look at me or dismiss me just because of that. That's what I want. I don't want you to go out there and keep police from killing my husband. I need you to fix the problem in the building where we are. And those are the things that we don't like to address. We want to boil the ocean, but we don't want to address the problem that's right here in front of us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, moving, like, instead of focusing on just purely pointing fingers, really trying to fold everyone in as a group on solutions. That's where, and especially, it's easy for us planners, right? Because we're all doers. So we're like, okay, great, roll up our sleeves. How can we, this is not right. How can we fix this? But keeping the focus on that too, don't you think that's the hard part? People get engaged and inspired, and I will go ahead and say it, white people get engaged and inspired when there's an uprising, but it's easy for us to go back to the norm, you know, just not having racial equality on our minds every day, and that is a huge battle, don't you think? I know Elizabeth and I have talked about this offline, is what are some things we can do to fold this into our daily recognition and our daily practices to make sure that we are doing our part? Because this is something for all of us.
I'm interested in hearing what my non-Black counterparts have to say.
I'm like, I'll go ahead and say it.
I mean, it's not for me. It's not for me. And I think, you know, understanding that, and Jen Artur, my good friend here, she hears me say it all the time. I will not be the Black girl that tells you what to do. That is not,
Yeah.
I don't believe that that is my job at all. I'm busy living my life. There's a responsibility and your own research and doing your own due diligence and understanding.
Yeah.
The same energy people put out for climate change, if we put the same energy out around people, that would be amazing. We're not all environmentalists, but guess what? We did the research, we found out, we understood what needed to happen. We're talking about oceans and trees and polar bears here. We're not talking about your neighbor, your aunt, your pastor, your grocery store clerk. We're talking about things that are external to what's in front of you every single day. So I'm very interested in hearing what others have to say.
Jeanne, we have 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. Oh gosh. Okay.
I know.
Well,
So
we
this
can
is-
get started anyway.
Yes. No, I want to let you guys know that if you want to continue the conversation, I'm going to jump over at Central Perk, which is one of the other breakout rooms. So join me there right after that, and we can continue to chat.
Oh, and
So
also,
really
Jeanne, can still
quickly,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry,
Amanda.
like one of the things that I feel like we as white women have a responsibility to do is to change the dialogue. So I'm having these continuing conversations. Like, I don't want to talk about diversity and inclusion. Quite honestly, it's bullshit and it's checking a box. So I'm not interested in checking your box off. And that conversation needs to be changed. And in my opinion, that's my responsibility to educate myself so that as those conversations happen, like that's a governmental box check in my opinion. And that has nothing to do with really making people feel welcome and a part of and heard and seen. So I think that that's just in general, like that's where our responsibility lies. We have a voice that's probably louder than most of the Black women or brown men and women that are in the room. And so when we collectively say, wait a minute, is that really what we're talking about here? Because it doesn't feel right to me. Like that's where our power lies. And that's all I gotta say.
I mean, I think that's a good point, but I also think it's important to remember that people are at different levels of this process, and some people get there faster than others. And so also trying to remember to be encouraging of that, you know, transition or that morphosis. I like to think of it as a morphosis. You're turning into a beautiful butterfly that's more accepting and more open and more in tune with the reality. And I try not to be like, it's really easy to get to a place of understanding and knowledge and think you're there, but I also think that's a place where you forget to keep checking yourself. So my sister is really like, out there. She's like helped to start the Black Lives Matter movement in Oregon, but sometimes she talks down to people who are in different phases of this process. And I think it's really important to bring people with and not push them out because they're not in, you know, a further place. Because I think people will like pull back because it is such a taboo topic, or it's perceived as. And I know we shouldn't have to shelter people's feelings, but you know, we want to keep moving forward with as many people as possible than going backwards. Does that resonate with anyone, or is that just?
I think so.
That's just me being a jerk.
No, I totally agree with you. I feel like if people are changing and they are evolving, and I think part of that is the education. I mean, it's hard to believe that people could be completely unaware of a lot of the things that are happening, but I think as we're becoming more aware, you know, and people are educating themselves more, they're reading, they're researching, they're trying to understand, they're trying to figure out what can they do personally, what little things, big things, giant things can they do in their everyday life. And what I really don't like is exactly what I think what you were saying, is that there's that group of people that are trying to make progress and move forward. And I actually shouldn't say group of people, because I hate to be put in a bucket and say that I'm in this group or that group, because I'm you know, I don't want to be in a bucket either. But people are moving in one direction, and if you're not moving if they're not moving in the same direction as you at the same speed that you're moving at, that's not wrong. That's still progress. Like, people are still making progress, and I think that we can push people away, and then they'll clam up and they won't want to, you know, they'll just go back to not doing anything if we don't allow them to sort of, you know, move at their own speed, with a little bit of nudging. But yeah, I think we have to be open to that too, that this is going to take a while.
I really want to continue this conversation with you guys. So please join me at Central Perk, so we can have a little bit more time to chat. And look me up on LinkedIn, Jeanne Procope, as it's written right here. You'll find me. I'm there. Just reach out. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Yes.
Before you go, do you have an Instagram handle?
Yes. I will put it to everybody on here.
Okay. Please. And thank you so much, Jeanne. That was amazing. You did a wonderful, wonderful job. And thank you for everyone who participated.
Thank you so much, guys. So I dropped it in. I'm at BB Proc on Instagram. Hit me up. Follow me. Thank you so much, guys. And I'll see you at Central Perk.
Thank you.
See you there.
All right.
Thank you. Feel free to stay if you wish. Our next session begins at 12:00 p.m. Central Time, or you can go ahead and join Jeanne at Central Perk. But thank you so much. All right, Miss Barber.
Yes,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Getting the hang of everything. Thank you.
You sounded awesome there. You had it smooth.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you can't see me sweat right now.
No, you look fantastic. You got this down.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have some notes for you I wanted to go over really quickly.
Perfect.
There we go. So I do have your video.
Yay.
For 20, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Amazing. And you will go ahead and manage the chat room, is that right?
I sure will, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And after the video, it sounds like you're going to go ahead and guide more discussion. So that sounds great as well.
Yes, or be an alarm for those who have fallen asleep during that. Yep.
Sounds good. Very nice. And I have you going to Central Perk afterwards. So that's really
sure.
good.
Happy to.
Amazing. All right. So, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, so do you want to, are you going to introduce me and then I can tell you to throw it to the video, or how do you want to do that? Because I was just kind of set up why I recorded it and then send it over. That works.
Great. So I'll do a quick introduction. I'll, announce your session name and your name, and I'll throw it to you. You can go ahead and introduce your video, and I will go ahead and play it for you. No problem.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Yep. I'm excited for you.
Oh, thank you. Me too.
You look nice.
Oh,
You
thank
sound
you.
good, nice and clear. Looks good.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, my girl, Kate Corpus, managed me to make sure that my lighting would be good and my background would be right. So,